Every 42 seconds, there is a divorce in America.
So sad that that's the truth. And it's shocking that that's our reality that we now live in today. What is the statistic for how many people make it in a marriage, like in general?
So only about half of the marriages in the U.S. make it. So that means 50% either end in separation or divorce. And we're a good example of that because Gage's parents are still married and my parents have been divorced for a couple years now. So that just shows you the 50% right there.
That's sad. You have a 1 in 2 chance of making it as a married couple. And that is pretty scary thought to have. And I'm glad that the fear of that didn't come in our way. I'm glad we got married because we are seeing the blessings that come from it. And we want to share with you guys a Bible verse that we have that kind of shares our heart on why we're making this video. And so, Maddie, why don't you read it for them?
So it's out of Psalm, and it's 19:14, and it says, "May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, Lord, my rock and my redeemer."
Mm-hmm. That verse is our prayer for this video and really our life. But ultimately, we want the words that we're speaking on this video to give glory to God and to shine on whoever's watching this video, to shine light to practical things that you can do that is going to help your marriage or help your relationship. And that's our heart. And so welcome to the Holy Coley Talk. This is our first one together. So we're excited to have you all listening to us. It is a blessing. So thank you so much for watching this video. And we are going to get into it. Our topic today is what, Maddie?
It is miscommunication.
Miscommunication. And there's a lot of harm that comes with miscommunication. And why don't you share with everybody the first one? We have 5 reasons. Why don't you share everybody the first harm that comes from miscommunication?
Yeah, so the first one we came up with was wasted time, and kind of how we thought about it was if you're listening to your spouse speak to you and you're thinking thoughts that are different from what they actually mean, and you're misconstruing what they mean in your own mind, and you're wasting all this time thinking about it, then that's the wasted time we're talking about.
That's not healthy.
And it's not good. So yeah, that was our first harmful effect that we came up with.
Wasted time. Do not waste time. Be open and honest with each other and try to really understand each other. And so go ahead and break them off to number 2.
And number 2, we came up with potential resentment. And I know that sounds a little harsh, a little scary.
It's a little scary sounding.
Yeah. So it's not meant to be scary, but if you think about the first topic we talked about, wasted time, overall, if you keep having those same misconstrued thoughts in your mind about what your spouse is talking about or saying to you, then it's going to create a snowball effect, and you're going to eventually explode and explode on your spouse.
Those aren't fun. Explosions aren't fun.
Not good. So that's where potential resentment comes into play, and ultimately what we meant by that.
That's good. So that's number 2 is potential resentment. And number 3, I'll share a little bit about, is about hindering vulnerability. I can't even say that word. Vulnerability. It's about a good relationship is open and honest with each other. And so anything that hinders vulnerability is bad. And miscommunication can do that because if you are trying to communicate something with me and I don't know exactly what you mean, I might take it a different way than you meant it, and you didn't even mean it in the first place, whether I took it negative or whatever, I thought that was not the way that you intended it to be. That's the miscommunication. If I think that way, and we have a problem now from whatever I thought you meant,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to want to have that problem again. And so
Right.
subconsciously in my mind, I'm not going to want to bring it up again because I'm, I guess, fearful of fighting again
Yeah.
and just going through the motions of bickering or
Mm-hmm.
whatever we're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
And I think it can go both ways. Like the person who misconstrued the thought, or the person that spoke, the person who spoke, and then it became an argument or discussion or heated discussion, they're not going to want to share their thoughts again either, or their feelings, because it became an argument. So they might be less likely to share, and you're less likely to share because you don't want to have an argument
Mm-hmm.
either. So I think it can go from both sides where you're not wanting to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And then I guess when that happens, when you don't share anything,
Mm-hmm.
where's the relationship in that? You're just not sharing anything, keeping all the feelings to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna grow. Definitely not gonna grow, which actually comes into our next topic. Maddie, why don't you share our fourth topic?
So our fourth topic is stunts relational growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we already kind of laid it out there why it can stunt relational growth is because you're not going to be vulnerable with each other. You're going to create resentment with each other, and you're wasting all this time doing that. So you're wasting time where you could be growing. And so I think that's where the relational growth gets stunted.
That's good. That's really good. So we got one is wasted time. Two is the potential resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Your third one is it hinders vulnerability. The fourth is it stunts personal growth. And the fifth one that I want to share with you guys is that all areas of our life is affected by the miscommunication.
Right.
Because, as you know, with the miscommunication, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a problem, there's an emotion, a negative emotion that we have, and that negative emotion that we have carries on to our daily activities.
Yep.
Like anything, like drinking this water. I'm not going to be as good as drinking this water if I had a problem with miscommunication, because I'm not going to be able to think clearly.
To drink the water.
I'm going to be so mad at Maddie that I'm going to be shaking my water, spilling it all over the place, and not being as efficient as I can, whether that's your work or your career, and whatever you're doing, just hanging out with family, being your other relationships. That's a big one.
Being present
In the moment. Mm-hmm. That's good. And so
taking care of yourself.
Yeah, taking care of yourself. All areas are affected. Yes. All areas are affected. The quadruple A. Yep. Okay. So that's the 5 harmful effects
of miscommunication.
From miscommunication. So why don't you give them a real life example of how this kind of happened recently?
Yeah. So last week while we were at the lake, Gage got a phone call from a friend, and we were out on the lake with my family, and the friend asked us to go to dinner. Gage came back and relayed the information to me about the invitation to dinner, and Gage did not mention that everyone was invited, and I took it not thinking that everyone was invited. Just Gage and I were invited.
Yeah, and she didn't take it in a good way. Like right when I shared that with her, I could see the change in demeanor and how negative it impacted her. And
so we will share some tips eventually at the end of this video of how you can prevent this. But so I took it that my family wasn't invited, and I was mad and upset, and I let it bother me for a few minutes. And Gage can share kind of how we went about it, or how we worked through the tension we had. But this is an example from our real marriage that we had a miscommunication on.
And so whenever I relayed the information to her, saw the change of demeanor, the negative effect, it instantly triggered my mind and my brain to have a negative thought towards you, because I just got an invite from my friend, and he wants to go on. He just wants to go out to dinner with the whole family, and he's inviting the whole family to come.
Mhm.
And in my head, I'm like, what's wrong with that? And so, being that I was thinking that, I was kind of maybe harsh in my communication with you,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry for that, for right in the beginning, for being harsh and being very standoffish in that moment. And so I'm sorry for that. And
Sorry too.
that's what you need to do to make reconciliation with your spouse when problems like this arise is one of you has to take action into going to that person
Mhm.
and making it right.
And clarifying.
Clarifying and confirming what you actually meant to say.
Yeah.
And also just being open and honest about it too.
Yeah. Be honest.
I mean, honesty is crucial. That's what happened. So that's how we resolved the issue. Is I came up to her, I said, Maddie, I don't really know what's going on, and tonality is big in this. When I'm coming up and speaking to her, I'm saying it in a very soft tone.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, Maddie, I don't know if I communicated this correctly, but I was under the I got invited from my friend, and he invited our whole family, and it seems like you got upset for that reason. And why did you get upset? And then that's when she came back and kind of explained that it wasn't, she didn't understand in the beginning that it was the whole family invited.
Yeah.
And so there was miscommunication there.
And I think, too, it's good to point out that, yes, we handled it in a good way minutes after, but you should be doing this in the moment, right away, once you're feeling angry or a negative emotion towards your spouse about the communication they had towards you. You should ask clarifying questions. You should be open and honest with how you feel, and you should do it right away so it doesn't waste time and fester and cause an issue in your marriage.
Yeah. And so that is our example, real life example. And a problem arose from miscommunication right there. And that will happen. And you need to do what we just said to resolve that issue. But there's some things that you can do and practically put into your life to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's what we really want to double down and get you guys to understand so you can have a healthy marriage with each other.
Yeah.
And the first topic that I want to tell you guys about is being aware. And we get this out of 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. And I got it right over here. It says, be sober-minded, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour. That's a scary verse too, because a roaring lion is something to be fearful of. Yeah. And in order to be watchful for that, to know the enemy is attacking you, is to be of sober mind. And so what does that mean? That means be aware. If you're not of sober mind, that means you're not aware. Something is distracting you and you're not seeing things clearly. And sin can do that. And any kind of life distractions can do that and really take away your awareness. So you got to always know that there's a war going on. The enemy's trying to get to you, and you need to be aware.
And you also need to be aware of how your spouse is reacting or taking your message, your communication, and the emotions they have with it. Just like Gage said, he noticed when I was told about the dinner invitation how my emotions, my demeanor changed, and he took that into account and thought through, probably tried to figure out why, and then came to me and asked those questions.
No, that's exactly right. And be aware that when I heard her response and felt her negative emotions, I felt my flesh wanting to just go back at you and and take you down with logic or whatever and be harsh. But I had to be aware that
of that emotion.
And that I had a choice.
Yeah.
And so that is important to prevent miscommunication, is to be aware. The next thing that is really big and I want to share with you guys is going to be in James. And it is listen and think before you speak.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times where I haven't been thinking before I have spoke. Yes. And that never ends up good, does it?
No.
No, it doesn't. So the verse I want to share with you guys is in James. James is filled with great practical things, and I strongly encourage you to read it if you haven't. But we're going to be in chapter 1, verse 19. It says, "My dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Wow. Not just some people. It says everyone should be this way.
Yeah.
That's a bold claim. And he's telling you to quickly listen to what your spouse has to say. Mm-hmm. Like when I came back to Maddie to reconcile the issue that we had, she had to be quick to listen and be receptive to what I had to say. Otherwise, we would have just kept going and kept going. And you also need to be slow to speak. Mm-hmm. Think before you speak, because your flesh in the instant, in quick time, will tell you things that you probably shouldn't say, and you should take time to really evaluate the weight of the words that you're about to say with your spouse, and make it submit to God's will. You want to be loving when you're speaking, and that kind of goes into the next part where it says be slow to anger. You don't want to be right when she says something to you to just start tensing up and get really angry, because when you're angry, more thoughts coming at you will start coming at you quicker,
and you're just gonna spew it all out.
And you're gonna spew out
not
crap.
Good. Yeah,
you're gonna spew out crap that is not beneficial and that hurts your marriage.
Spouse. Yes.
And so that's the part about thinking and listening before you speak. That if you do that, you can prevent a lot of problems with miscommunication.
Yeah, and we have another verse we'd like to share. It's Proverbs 15:28.
Okay. Oh, Proverbs. We're in the Old Testament.
It says, "The mind of the righteous person thinks before answering, but the mouth of the wicked blurts out evil things." Mm. And Gage kind of touched on it a little bit when he said he had a choice with how he responded. And I think God is warning you of that in that verse.
Yeah.
And how you can either speak righteously and how a godly person would respond, or you can blurt out and spew out angry thoughts and evil things to each other. And so you have that choice to make. And I think that's kind of where that verse is trying to teach you.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. And whether you realize it or not, you got one of two options. You got the good and you got the evil.
Yeah.
And those of you who want to do good, which I believe is most people, we need to think before we speak and choose our words wisely, so we don't fall into this wickedness that exists. And it's very tempting, and it feels good when you're doing it. But the ultimate thing they want you to do is to steal, kill, and destroy your life and destroy your marriage. Mm-hmm. And so if you understand that, understand the trap of the enemy and what they actually want for your life to look like or end up,
you'll be ahead of the game.
You'll be ahead of the game. Be good and listen and think before you speak. That's one huge thing to prevent miscommunication.
Yeah, exactly. And then moving on to our third prevention kind of tip that we have is the way in which you speak. So we called it tonality, and we kind of talked about it already. But I think that women kind of have a tendency to be more sassy and judgmental, and men have a tendency to be more harsh and negative, not negative, harsh and
kind of rough and abrupt
with their thoughts. or their words.
Yeah.
And tonality has a big way of miscommunicating your communication, because I might take just you saying hey to me in a bad way. If you abruptly say hey, I'm going to think that's negative. I'm not going to think that in a positive way. But if you're just saying hey,
Yes.
then the whole conversation, the whole feeling behind the conversation changes
That's right.
just based on the tone of your voice. So I think going off that, we have a verse to go with it. It's in Proverbs again, and it's verse 15 or chapter 15, verse 1. And it says, "A gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word stirs up wrath." And that is basically exactly what I just mentioned to you. And so I think the Lord warns of that again in the Bible, and you can see that in Proverbs.
Yeah, and gentleness. That's what we should be striving for, and even as a man.
Yeah.
Because I know men want to be big and strong and masculine, and that's good, and there's a time and place for that, which is the majority of the time. But in your marriage and with your spouse, you want to be gentle, and you want to speak in a way that's loving and soft. And if you do that, then it's not going to stir up anger within your spouse.
Yeah.
And so I know I've been
That's
guilty of being harsh, and I might not even realize it because I
It's just
don't think
natural.
I'm being that
Yeah.
extreme, but there's a little bit of harsh tonality in my voice that she picks up on, and I can tell after I say it how it can affect her. And so that's something that we're working on currently, is how to be more loving in the way that we talk to each other, and how to be more soft-spoken and gentle.
Yep.
And
in a way we do that is, lately at least, we've been trying to right away after someone says something in a tone that we don't respond positively to, kind of mention it to the other person, like, hey, that wasn't in a loving way. Or vice versa, you might catch it. Like I caught myself earlier today, and I went in and apologized like 2 seconds later.
thank
So
you for that.
you're welcome. So it happens, but just try your best to be gentle and kind and loving like Jesus. And everyone makes mistakes, so just apologize and call each other out for it too.
Yeah, that's good. So tonality. Watch your tone, and that can prevent some big problems with miscommunication in your marriage. Another topic is pray. And this one is so crucial. You need to pray for your spouse, and you also need to pray with your spouse, because there's power when you
unite your prayer,
and when you communicate to God together, because you're one flesh, and you're communicating to God, and you're
on the same page,
exalting him, you're lifting him up, you ask for things. Prayer is so important with your relationship with God, because it is communication. Just like we're talking about today with miscommunication is a huge problem in marriage, miscommunication is a huge problem with your relationship with God too. And you can have miscommunication if you ain't communicating with him at all. Prayer is the ultimate vessel for communication with God. And so I want to share with you guys a verse, which is in James. It's James chapter 1. I think it's verse 5. Yes. So it says, "Now if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him." So if any of you lacks wisdom, who lacks wisdom?
Most of us.
I think most of us lack wisdom. We might have a little bit of wisdom, but in general, I know I lack a lot of wisdom. And so I should be calling upon God to come down and help.
A higher power.
A higher power. Having faith that God is going to come through and help you with your marriage, and exalting him and thanking him for how good of a God he actually is. And so that's the importance of prayer, and how that can prevent problems of miscommunications too.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
why don't you hit the next kind of point we have too?
So the next point on how you can prevent miscommunication in your marriage is something we've already talked about, but you can confirm with your spouse what they said.
Yes.
And then ask clarifying questions on what they said. So an example would be like, this is how I took what you said. Is this what you meant by saying blah? And that can be a clarifying question, and you're confirming.
That's simple.
And it's a simple way, and you need to come into the conversation with an open heart and being honest, and you need to not be judgmental or sassy or harsh. You need to just come into the conversation calm and gentle and ask clarifying questions. So.
That's good. I think it's so important to be clear.
Yeah.
And everything in this world and our enemies trying to stop that and give us so many distractions to not be clear. And there's so much peace when everything is clear.
Yes. Just like the ocean.
It's like the ocean.
Calm.
So much peace when it's calm and when it's flat, and it's exactly right. But when the waves start coming,
when havoc
starts to wreak.
Yes.
And it's not good.
No.
And the next thing that we want to share with you guys that can be a problem with miscommunication or can prevent the problem of miscommunication is to write out your thoughts.
Yeah.
And Maddie does a wonderful job at this, and I'm working on getting better at this. But for harder discussions, I think it is so important that you have this option. You don't have to, if you have struggles with articulating your thoughts and your emotions and you want to be clear and open and honest, a good way to do it is by writing. Yes. And not by texting or Snapchatting your big issues, because I think there can be a lot of distractions on your phone when you're doing that can get your mind off of it. But when you have a pen and a paper or pencil and a paper and you're sitting there writing down what's in your heart and what's in your mind, it is pure.
Yeah.
But when you're on text, I know I can text fast, and so I can go ahead of myself and not think before I speak in writing form, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so why don't you tell them what you have done kind of for writing out the thoughts for the harder discussions?
Yeah, so I've done it a few times now where either it's too difficult for me to put into words by voicing it because I'm scared I'll get nervous to keep on continuing the conversation and won't say everything that's actually on my heart. And for me, it allows me to think my thoughts out clearly and realize the power of my words. And like, I will write it and then I will reread it and be like, okay, how would I take this if I was reading this and it was being written to me? Would I take it in a negative way or in a way that I'm like being attacked by the other spouse? And so I think that has helped me a lot, be able to break down my thoughts and just see the actual power of my words. So I think that if you can do it for harder discussions, I think it is valuable to be able to do. And it's just kind of like how you write, and not everyone does this, but if you write your prayers out to the Lord, or just in general just want to speak to God, it's an easy way for you to have an outlet to God is through writing. And so I think that's kind of how I take it, is how I speak to the Lord, and the tone and the way in which I speak to the Lord on paper is just better and more clear.
Yeah, I think that's good. Not just that it's an easier way, I think, but that it's a more pure way.
Yeah.
And I think about the verses about how the tongue is a fire and it cannot be tamed. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be tamed. You can tame it a little bit, but not completely. And so there's always going to be fault with your speaking and with your tongue.
Yeah.
But with your writing, it's more of a pure. It's coming straight from your mind
Mm-hmm.
onto a paper, and when I receive it, I know that it is that way and it's pure
Mm-hmm.
because I can tell it's handwritten and it's from your heart. It's just like a Christmas card. Would you rather get I know you want a Christmas card with money in it, but if you look at a Christmas card and it has the print, like a printed saying on it, like Merry Christmas, we love you, and then someone of your family members just put dash Johnny. That's not as cool as someone writing out on the Christmas card, hey, we are so grateful to have you in our family and we love you so much. If there's anything at all that we can do for you, we are here for you. Please reach out if you need anything. Love, Johnny. Reading that is way more impactful than just having a print. So that just shows that receiving it doesn't make a difference receiving it.
Yeah.
I don't receive her writing as, oh, she didn't want to talk to me.
Yeah.
That's bad because she didn't want to voice her concerns or her feelings.
And I think too, it allows you to think out your thoughts and like take that time. How we said you need to be slow to speak and quick to listen, and it just gives you that ability to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Even more so, I believe, if you're writing it out.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just
that's
a
good.
little thing.
So write out your thoughts for harder discussions, or just really any thoughts. Just write them out on a handwritten on a piece of paper, and share them with your spouse, and that's going to help you prevent problems in your marriage with miscommunication. So we got one more topic that we want to share with you guys on prevention. So why don't you tell them what we do?
And this is one of our biggest things that we personally as a couple do, and I think it's helped us tremendously. And it's kind of two things. We do a weekly check-in with each other over the week, and then the first one I want to talk about, actually, I'll back up a little bit, is our daily check-in. We don't call it a daily check-in, but we ask each other how we saw God in our day and kind of just check in with each other and share those intimate ways that we saw God throughout our day, or an encounter with someone else that sparked a connection with God, or whatever it may be. So that's kind of the first thing that we do. And then we also have, like I mentioned a little bit ago, was a weekly check-in, but we've kind of moved away from calling it a check-in, and it's more now a family meeting.
Ooh, family meeting.
So you can do it with just your spouse, or if you are a family, you can do it with your kids. I know my parents used to do it sometimes at the table at one night a week, and we would go around and kind of share our thoughts on family discussion.
Yeah.
So what we do for our family meetings are we kind of dedicate it to our marriage, and we don't dedicate it to our individual feelings necessarily. We talk about, what went wrong in our, like, the struggles of our marriage that week, or it could even be where you bring up an argument that happened, or something that bothered you, like maybe you haven't talked to your spouse about it yet, which isn't good, but maybe you haven't. So then you talk to them on the weekend about it. And then we also like to point out, you got to have something positive. So
yes, you want to highlight successes. You don't just want to keep talking about the negatives.
Yeah. So then we talk about kind of what went well for us in our marriage that week, or what was our favorite thing that we did together, or whatever.
Your favorite moment of the week, and what stuck out to you.
And then we like to kind of go into the following week, what's going to be our goals as a couple together, and how can I be a better spouse the next week. And so that's kind of how we go about our family meeting. And then there's a verse that I want to share with you guys that kind of goes along with that, and it's in 2 Timothy 4:2, and it says, "Preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and teaching."
Yes, and thank you for reading that and
Mhm.
sharing that. And Paul is writing this to encourage people to preach the gospel and preach the word of Jesus. And he's telling them to be prepared in season and out of season. And that's what I grasp from this verse that I want to apply to marriage, is because just like preaching the word, we should always be ready
Mhm.
when it comes to marriage and communicating with each other clearly.
Yeah.
And by having the weekly check-ins, that's you're establishing an easy way, or not an easy way, you're establishing a way so you can be constantly
On the same
on the
page
same page, and
and
it
honest.
makes it easy to win
Yeah.
because you're gonna always on this so and so day or so and so time to check in with each other and to be open and to be honest. And if you schedule that out and be disciplined to do that, the benefits are exponential and they're so healthy.
We like to do it on Sundays after church typically,
Yep.
but you could do it after
You can do it
coffee
on-
one morning.
on Tuesday.
Yeah, you can do it whenever, but just for us, it works for us. Our
Yeah.
hearts and minds are open to receive each other in a loving way because of going to church. So that's just what works for us.
That's good. And
Yeah.
so that kind of wraps it up on the topics of how to prevent miscommunication in your marriage is the weekly check-in. So be aware, listen and think before you speak, watch your tone, pray, confirm and clarify with your spouse what you actually intend to communicate, write out your thoughts, especially for harder discussions, and also have the weekly check-ins. That's how you can prevent miscommunication in your marriage and be healthy.
Yeah.
So if you are watching this video and you maybe need help, or your marriage isn't going the way that you want it to, or maybe it's going good and you might just have some random questions that you want to ask, I ask that you just either drop them down below in the comment section, or if it's a more private manner, like I said at the beginning for our verse, that we want, when I share our heart, we want to help you. So if there's something private going on, we encourage you to send us an email. Our email will be in the description as well.
Yeah.
And we will pray about your issue, and we'll also see what we can do.
Give some guidance, some advice.
To help. Some guidance and some advice.
Or just what's worked in our marriage, not necessarily what is going to work for you, but
exactly
the best that we can help you, we'd like to.
Yeah, we want to help. And just to give a little bit about us is that we've only been married for 4 months.
4 months on the day.
4 months on the day, actually, today. And it's been such a great 4 months. I love you.
I love you too.
And I don't want you, or for anyone who's skeptical about someone who's been married for only 4 months giving advice upon marriage, it's not about that. It's not about being a professional in marriage and that you've done it for so many years, which there's wisdom that comes with that.
Yes.
But it's the precipice that there's a choice that we have.
Yeah, and we're trying to create our marriage strong and set the standard for how we want our marriage to go. And so I think that is kind of just what we're trying to share with you guys, is how we have viewed marriage and the way that we would like it to go. Because like I said, I'm from a divorced family and he's not. So there's also wisdom with that comes. But we're not saying we know everything.
We definitely don't know everything. But, at the end of the day, marriage is ordained by God. And the first thing you should do is have a relationship with God. Try to do that before you get married.
Yeah.
But if not, you're not too far away. God still wants you.
Yeah.
But the choice is to follow God. And that's what we are ultimately trying to communicate with you guys through these talks And
I have a challenge for you.
Maddie has a challenge for you guys.
So the last thing that we mentioned as a way to prevent miscommunication was our weekly check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So I challenge any of our viewers that are in a relationship or married or in a family that wants to have a check-in.
Yeah.
You should have this weekly check-in, set a day and a time that you're going to do it, and try to do it for the next month and see just how it changes your life and transforms your marriage or your relationship. And you can do it the same way we did it, or you can look up questions on the internet, or you can just literally look up family meeting topics or marriage topics, and you can just go through questions like that. We kind of did that and then developed our questions based off of different examples, but I challenge you to have a weekly check-in for a month.
That's a good challenge, and I think that's important that you brought that up, that you challenge them to act, because you have to act when God is saying something to you. And I'm not saying we're God, but the reason we made this video is inspired by God and by God's word. And so if you got something from it and you felt like the Lord was telling you it, then you should act. You shouldn't just take it in, receive it, and not do anything. Because like we were saying in James, we got a lot of good stuff out of James today. It says faith without deeds is dead faith. And we want you guys to not have dead faith. We want you to be live and thriving and blossoming in your marriage. And in order to do that, you must act. So please, after watching this video, you go do that weekly check-in. You call your spouse, or if you're beside your spouse, you tell them, hey, we're going to do a weekly check-in on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Make it happen. Don't be lazy, and pursue God wholeheartedly.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for watching this video.
Yep.
Maddie, do you have any closing statements that you want to share?
I do not. I think, well, maybe a little bit.
Okay, let's hear it.
Just lean on the Lord and not your own understanding, and be gracious to your spouse. Each of you are going to make mistakes, and it's easy to get resentment towards them for making mistakes, but you got to act in a way as God would. And so you're going to lean on God's understanding and act as a loving Christian. And those are my end
thoughts. Those are
thoughts.
great. Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like the video, we ask that you please leave a like, comment on the video, and also subscribe to us. We got some exciting things coming soon that you can consume. We're not going to share it right now, but we'll share it later. Thank you guys for watching Holy Coley, and we'll see you on the next talk.